Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to look at the first book in Tamora Pierce's The Circle of Magic Quartet. So, there's this book. This is my paperback copy. I love this series. So this is the introductory book, so to speak. This is where you get introduced to our four main young characters who are all about 10, 11 years old. The first main character is Sandry herself. Her full name is Sandry Torin. She is a noble. Her parents were, basically they lived on their names. So why, yes, they did in fact have their own wealth. Her father's great uncle, or her father's uncle, is the leader of the land where most of this story takes place. Emmeline, basically he's the Duke of Emmeline. So that's her kind of background. And then she has other family in the country of Norman, which is up north. She chooses to stay with her uncle. So her parents and her are in another land called Hattar, which is taken over by smallpox. Everybody dies. Well, mostly everybody, including her parents. She's hidden by her nurse, who is of the trader class, who kind of, best description is they're gypsies. They buy and sell things, and they travel from place to place. So they're travelers. And her nurse has been one of them. Her nurse hides her in a closet, essentially, a storage room, when everything goes crazy because mass sickness and death and smallpox. And then she's seen and killed by an angry mob because she's a traitor, and the general populace don't particularly like this class of people. Similar again to the gypsies in Europe. So she's killed. Sandry is locked behind a hidden door for several days. She is found by a wizard by the name of Nikolai Goldeneye, known as Nico. So he had a vision. He saw her. He found her. He takes her to her uncle. And her uncle says, okay, I'm a widower, I have grown kids, I can't exactly, my castle is not a place for a young girl. So Nico recommends she go to Winding Circle Temple, which is a renowned temple in the kingdom and known for its magic. So he sends her there. And she likes weaving and embroidery, which is a lot. She likes this a lot. She gets in trouble for liking it a lot when she's with the nobles, in the nobles' dormitory at Winding Circle Temple. So she's also extremely friendly and will pretty much talk to anybody, no matter what their class. So she gets in trouble, and she's weird and different because she's also not used to dealing with other children around her own class, because when she was traveling around with her parents, essentially all the nobles thought she was strange, and her parents were weird. So she wasn't allowed to really interact with or play with other kids. So she's 11 years old and is kind of awkward. And so they take her to Moonstream, who's the head of the temple. And it's like, we don't want to deal with her. She's irritating. And there she meets another person, Tresnia Chandler. She's actually the fourth person you hear about her story. She's cranky, she's chubby, she has glasses, and she has red hair. And she grows lightning in it. Yeah, her family, she's a merchant class from there's maps in here. Capachin. So they're here in Emmeline. And then her family is over here in Capachin. And she's basically, Nico happens to be traveling through at Stone Circle Temple, where she's been pretty much abandoned. Her family had been tossing her from person to person for the longest time because they don't want to do much to do with her. She's cranky and she's weird, and the wind picks up around her. She has sparks in her hair, and essentially they think she's cursed. So they give her the Stone Circle Temple, who also kind of thinks she's cursed. Nico originally doesn't want anything to do with her. Then he looks at her, realizes, oh crap, Weather Witch. He doesn't tell her this. He just realizes, oh dear, she has lots and lots of power. She's very, very magical. I need to train her before she goes crazy. So he takes her to Winding Circle Temple. She's put with in a dormitory of other kids her own age. Again, freaks everybody out because she's cranky. She likes to read. She doesn't want to be social, and they get irritated with her because she won't do what they say, and she's like, just leave me alone. And so they take her to Moonstring around the same time Sandry is. And Sandry is nice to her because that's what she is. Sandry sees behind the bravado. But they're both sent to Winding Circle, sent to Discipline Cottage. Now, when they get there, there's 2 other children there. There's Deja, who Nico finds her in the middle of the ocean. She's a trader class. I think her family was destroyed by a storm. Her ship was completely destroyed. She survived. Nico found her. She was outcasted. She was considered Tengashi, which is bad luck. So she's pretty much been kicked out of her own people. And Nico takes her to Discipline. Again, she's put in a dormitory. She doesn't quite get along because she's a large black girl. She carries around a staff that has no markings on it, which is a mark of her place, essentially, that she's an outcast. And she's a traitor, so they don't like her. So she ends up Discipline Cottage because they think that's a better place for her. The other kid that ends up there is a young boy by the name of Briar. Briar's from another country, and she is nice enough to provide some mat. So the neighboring country of Soat. He was a street rat and a thief. Basically a kid who grew up on the streets. His mother had died when he was very young. He had been caught twice before, so he knew he was in jail. He's about 11 years old, and he was nurturing some moss there, but he knows he's going to essentially be sent to hard labor, where he's going to basically live for about 2 years before dying. And yes, he admits this. But Nico had a vision of a green mage there, and he shows up and like, I'll take him, before he's sent off to the docks, knowing he's going to die, along with the rest of his friends. So he's rescued, taken to Winding Circle Temple, but before that, his name was Roach, and he got to pick his name because the magistrate refused to send a roach to a temple. So he picked the name Briar Moss. Moss because of the plant he was nurturing in the prison cell, which he didn't think nobody uses people's last names anyway, at least in his mind. And Rosebriars because he was kind of attacked by a thorny rose plant when he was trying to steal into a rich person's house. So he's brought there, but again, he's a street. He was a thief. There's little X's tattooed like on the base of his hand here. So he's bullied and kind of distrusted in the dormitories. So he ends up at Discipline as well. So there are the 4 kids there. There are 4 bedrooms. Deja and Tress end up on the 2nd floor, and then Sandry and Briar are downstairs. And yes, sometimes that makes sense. They do talk about where their bedrooms are. So they're all there. Sandry tries to befriend everybody. She has a bunch of weavings that she's done, so she kind of gives them to people. She gives them to Deja, and she speaks traitor because that's what her nurse was. So she bonds with Deja because she understands her. And Briar also kind of understands her, and they all bond together eventually. And they end up being weaved together. We'll get to that. That's the end of this book. So Sandry, the 2 women who run Discipline Cottage are Rosethorn and Lark. Lark is the weaving mage, and Rosethorn, as by her name, yeah, she's a gardener. So Sandry sneaks into Lark's workroom and gets attracted to weaving. And as opposed to anybody else, Lark nurtures it and starts teaching her how to spin. And will eventually teach her how to weave and do a lot of things because they're aware that each one of these children has a magical affiliation to these real things. So Briar sneaks into the garden, attracts Rosethorn's bean plants, and she has to tell them to let him go. Essentially, they wrap their little plant themselves around him and won't let him go, and she has to yell at them. And basically yells at him. It's like, yes, you plants pay attention to you because you're a green mage, and now I have to teach you because you're irritating. And I have to teach you. Yeah, Rosethorn is thorny. But she does end up loving Briar quite a lot. Maybe from very close and not in that way. and late pre-warning, Rose Thorn and Lark are, you find this out at the end of book 4, they're in a relationship. So yes, they are in fact a lesbian couple. They do not share a room, but they are in fact a lesbian couple. So something to be aware of in this book. So, but Rose Thorn and Briar become a very close relationship. The same with all the other kids and their teachers. Sandry and Lark become very, very close. Sandry learns quite a bit from her. Now, Deja goes wandering off one day. She meets Frostpine. Frostpine is a metal mage. And that's what Deja's affiliation is. She actually, unlike a lot of metal mages, she's similar to Frostpine in she can handle all metal. So, and then Tress is a weather witch, and she's matched with Nico because there's nobody else really to teach her. So he's teaching, and he does teach all of them. He teaches them meditation, and which is a way for them to control their magic, because right now it's going everywhere. And particularly when Tress gets upset, she grows lightning in her hair when she gets upset, and wind is flying everywhere, and she has issues, which is the reason she's scared people. She does not scare either. She doesn't scare her housemates all that much. So the beginning of most of this book is you get these kids' backstories, you get the beginning of their training, and what's going on. It's a very hot summer, and there's been minor earthquakes going on a regular basis. Well, another temple, a very arrogant magic user, decides to try to capture the energy of an earthquake in mirrors. So near the end of this, the children, and they have acquired a small dog. They were in the village, and Sandry sees some boys torturing this small white fluffy thing and tries to protect them, and then her friends eventually come to rescue her, and they get banned from being down in the market because Tress accidentally lets loose a water spout because she's just trying to dump water on people, somebody spins around and you get a water spout. And again, they're young magic users, they don't have much control. In fact, I'm not sure that all of them fully understand how powerful they are at this point. So they get a little dog, they nurture him. Sandry offers to pay for everything out of her own inheritance because she thinks it's her responsibility. She definitely takes responsibility, and then all the rest of them back her up. It's like, no, we all did this. And the Duke, basically, they just essentially get banned from the marketplace until they're older and they're under control. So after this, them and the dog gets loose when they're out walking one day because their teachers are off. It's heat of the day, nobody can think, and he runs into a cave. They end up underground when this massive earthquake hits, and Sandry essentially weaves their magic together. She has a thread in her pocket, and they put their magic together in order to protect themselves, and essentially prevent them from having a cave in where they're at in this they're sitting down in basically a tiny little cave, and protect themselves until they can essentially, their magic net that they've woven around themselves in order to stay safe is brought forth by their teachers and Moonstream. Now, they've used a lot of magic, so they're very tired after this. And again, Sandry has woven their magic together. Nobody really understands what the heck that means, but they can now talk to each other inside their heads. So that's the big thing. And they're massively interconnected, and their magic is going to go crazy. That really shows up in book 3. But that is it for this book. So this is the introductory book, even though it focuses on Sandry, is very much the introductory book of this series. It's very, very good. It's not too long. It's definitely in the teen section. It ends with, it's 252 pages, so not too long. Great book. I'm trying to think. Yeah, you could probably read it to younger kids. Middle school would probably be the youngest I would read on their own, though maybe younger than that. You could probably get some later elementary school kids interested. There's no real love stories in any of these books. Even when she has another quartet with the circle opens, there is no love stories, though. I'm trying to think. Briar does, no, you really don't get anything until she kind of tries to conclude the story with the will of the Empress. So no, you can probably read all of these books to younger children if you so please. They're very good. They're very much a traditional fantasy story. This is probably later Middle Ages. So think more advanced Middle Ages, past the age of knights. So past the age of knights and serfs, we're kind of in more civilized. That's where these stories take place. So great book. You do have to read the books in order. So I will be back with you. I'm going to finish up. That's it for this series, this book. The next book is Tress's book, which I will cover next. And then you have Deja's, and then you have Briar's. So that is it for this book review. If you like this review, stick around. Next week you'll get the second installment. I will finish up through September the rest of these books, and then I will skip because October is filled with all sorts of Halloween-y stuff, and you know, the finishing of Harry Potter, which, yes, that's the other thing, that's the other video that you'll find that's being released at the same time as this one, is the start of the Harry Potter series. And yes, I'm covering all of them, so they stretch from September to October. So I'm going to cover these 4 books this month, and then I'm going to cover 4 films. If you want to know what those are, check out my introduction to September. That will tell you what I'm covering there. If you like this video, I have a bunch of other book reviews. I have more book reviews coming. October, you're probably getting like 5 videos a week because I'm covering Harry Potter and a bunch of Halloween stuff. I do family film reviews as well, but mostly with a sprinkling of secular or non-religious homeschooling stuff and some child-focused travel information. So that's kind of what I cover. If you like this review, like what I have to say, want to see more, like and subscribe. Thank you.